Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Archfey Warlock, which is, one of the originals from the Player's Handbook. I feel like the Archfey was a really thematic and interesting choice, and overall, I think it was an excellent subclass at the time. I do think it's been overshadowed, though, by some of the more recent ones that have come along. But that doesn't mean that this is a bad choice, necessarily. It just means that things like the Genie and the Hexblade tend to kind of overshadow many of them, in my opinion. Warlock is definitely a class that has improved over time. Maybe not to the same extent as Sorcerer or Ranger, but has definitely benefited a lot from further source materials giving us more options. But, like I said, that doesn't mean that Archfey is bad at all. And I really do think that it has some cool themes and mechanics behind it, which, we're going to explore in this video. So, just like every other Warlock, when you choose the Warlock class, we're going to get our patron right at level 1, which is very nice. Especially since, half the time we're only taking 1 or 2 levels of Warlock, so it's good to get that ability right at the beginning. Warlock. This is why I love you, though. Anyways, so we're going to get an expanded spell list. Note, though, that unlike, say, a cleric or somebody like that who gets a bunch of domain spells that are just automatically added to your class, these ones are just like more options that you could take. And I should probably point out, as much as I sometimes complain about the sorcerer's spells no one problem, Warlock has the exact same number of spells known at pretty much every single level. So it's not like Sorcerer is unique in that. And at least Sorcerer has a couple of new subclasses that help with that. Although, to be fair, Warlock, you've only got a couple spell slots per short rest for most of your career. So having only a couple spells known doesn't really matter when you can only cast a couple spells anyways. Anyways, enough ripping on my favorite class in the game. So, Archfey is going to give us these options. Level 1, we're going to get Fairy, Fire, and Sleep. These are both great spells that, in the case of Fairy Fire, just don't scale. And in the case of Sleep, don't scale great. And that's another problem if we're going to be playing, mostly Warlock, is that our Pack Magic slots are automatically scaling. And if our spells aren't scaling, they can be really, really great choices at low levels, but they may be something we want to switch out. That being said, though, Sleep is probably the best spell in the entire game at level 1. It's just an entire combat ender. So, not a bad spell to have on your spell list, and then swap it out later anyways. Level 2, Calm Emotions and Phantasmal Force. Calm Emotions is a really nice spell that I almost never ever take. I probably should give it more of a chance, because the few times I've seen it used, it was always pretty effective. So, it's not that it's a bad spell, it's just, personally it's not one I'm always thinking of when I look at my spell list usually. But, good spell. Phantasmal Force. This one can be really good if you're, quite creative with it, and of course not dealing with something that has, true sight or whatever else, or sees through illusions. Again, though, the problem with these is the one we've already mentioned, which is lack of scaling. Level 3, Blink and Plant Growth. Blink is a very nice defensive spell. Granted, it's like 50% chance of being awesome and 50% chance of doing absolutely nothing on any given round, or, but it's still pretty good. I like it. Plant Growth is just excellent battlefield control. It's actually just a great spell, period. So having that on my spell list is not a bad thing. And as I start to get to some of these higher level spell slots, the fact that they don't scale still kind of sucks, but it doesn't hurt quite as much. Like casting a 4th level spell with a 5th level spell slot doesn't hurt as much in my soul as casting a 1st level spell with a 5th level spell slot. Still not optimal, but definitely nowhere near as bad. Anyways, 4th level, Dominate Beast and Greater Invisibility. So Dominate Beast is an amazing spell that affects a very limited number of targets. Very unfortunate there. But under the right circumstances, it is an excellent spell. I just wish it, targeted more. Greater invisibility, though, no complaints. That spell is amazing. So, if it's there, I'm probably going to take it. Level 5, we get Dominate Person and Seeming. Dominate Person, same thing as Dominate Beast, except way wider variety of targets usually because we're looking at humanoids instead of beasts. Excellent spell. And Seeming, also an excellent spell. So, could do a lot worse, that's for sure. So, on to the actual class abilities, not just the expanded spell list. At level 1, we're going to get Fey Presence. So, your patron bestows upon you the ability to project the beguiling and fearsome presence of the Fey. As an action, you can cause each creature in a 10-foot cube originating from you to make a Wisdom saving throw against your Warlock spell save DC. The creatures that fail their saving throws are all charmed or frightened by you, your choice, until the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Between the two, I would probably choose frightened usually. The charmed condition sounds great, but it's actually nowhere near as powerful as you actually tend to think it is, especially if you reread the charmed condition. Yeah, but in social circumstances, it can be pretty good if you're able to pull it off without anybody noticing that you just, charmed some people. It does have friendly fire. It does not differentiate, so that's a bit of a minus. But this is actually a pretty good crowd control ability as a level 1 character. That's pretty rare usually, especially like an area of effect one. Personally, I think it's a pretty good ability. It recharges on a short rest, or a long rest, of course, but that's pretty excellent. It does take my action, which is maybe not quite ideal, but, AoE crowd control at level 1. It's pretty rare usually, and if it is available, it's usually not this good. So, I like it. Level 6, we get Misty Escape. So, you can vanish in a puff of mist in response to harm. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to turn invisible and teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. You remain invisible until the start of your next turn, or until you attack or cast a spell. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. This ability is also quite excellent. It does require your reaction, and it does require you to take damage. So, it's not like you can just do it at will kind of thing. But, Misty Step is already pretty good. Invisibility is pretty good. 60-foot range is really good. This isn't taking a spell slot or anything. You just, you take some damage, you teleport, you turn invisible until the next turn or until you attack or cast a spell. It's just a really solid, great ability. I like that it's good whether I'm playing like a blade type warlock and I want to be in there hitting people with a sword, or whether I'm standing back and, shooting with a bow or firing Eldritch Blasts, casting spells. Either way, just the ability to move out of harm and turn invisible is just a great ability. And, as a reaction, I like it a lot. Level 10, we get Beguiling Defenses. So your patron teaches you how to turn the mind-affecting magic of your enemies against them. You're immune to being charmed, and when another creature attempts to charm you, you can use your reaction to attempt to turn the charm back on that creature. The creature must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your Warlock spell save DC, or be charmed by you for 1 minute, or until the creature takes any damage. So let's deal with this in two parts. The first part is being immune to charm, which is excellent. Being charmed really sucks as a player character. So the fact that you just straight up immune to charm, this is really, really handy. Now, charm conditions are often kind of limited, so, would I rather be like, say, immune to fire? Probably, but it's still a pretty good ability. The ability to try to reflect the charm back on the person or creature charming you. This ability is really nice, but it's also, having seen it in play, it's a lot more limited than you might expect. And the reason I say this is because a lot of things that are capable of charming a party member are often immune to charm themselves, especially once we start getting into this CR10 plus type of range, which means that, you know, they're immune to charm, I'm immune to charm. The ability to try to reflect it back on them isn't necessarily great. We also start facing things with magic resistance and legendary resistances. So even if they're not immune to charm, it starts becoming a lot more difficult to charm them, even by reflecting their charm back on them. But you know, it also ends if they take any damage, which is probably not ideal, because, you know, if they try to charm you on their turn, I'm going to have a bunch of party members probably coming up next that are going to be attacking it, right? But, you know, just the fact that I personally am immune to charm and circumstantially may be able to turn this to my advantage and charm something else, you know, it's not a bad ability by any means. Like I said, it's unfortunate the charm condition, you know, tends to be something that these type of creatures are usually immune to themselves. But, you know, if all it was immune to charm, it'd still be an okay ability. Nothing wrong with that. And at level 14, we get Dark Delirium. You can plunge a creature into an illusory realm. Sorry, I can't read. That's okay, though. As an action, choose a creature that you can see within 60 feet of you. It must make a wisdom saving throw against your Warlock spell save DC. On a failed save, it is charmed or frightened by you, your choice, for 1 minute or until your concentration is broken as if you were concentrating on a spell. This effect ends early if the creature takes any damage. Again. Until this illusion ends, the creature thinks it's lost in a misty realm, the appearance of which you choose. The creature can see and hear only itself, you, and the illusion. You must finish a short or long rest before you can use this feature again. So, I like the fact that it comes back on a short rest and we can actually use it quite a bit. I like the fact that it's actually a pretty decent crowd control type ability, but it's one where I'm not going to be using it on the main target we're trying to kill because it's just going to end, right? However, let's say we have like the big boss guy and maybe he's got some like minions. Maybe he's got like a healer priest type guy who's, you know, trying to buff him and support him and stuff like that. I can choose to try to control that guy, get him kind of like removed from the fight essentially, right? And, you know, we'll try to kill the boss anyway. Nobody's damaging this guy. It can be really useful for those types of abilities. My main problem with it, though, is that it's just a lot weaker than a lot of the other Warlock level 14 abilities. Like, if you compare this to Hurl Through Hell, Hurl Through Hell also is a very nice crowd control ability where I remove somebody from the combat for a round. Granted, it's a short amount of time, but they also take a truckload of damage on top of that, and there's no saving throw or anything else. If I land and attack, and, you know, I mean, by 14, I could be just firing off 3 Eldritch Blasts. If one ray hits this guy, I can banish him from the fight and do a whole bunch of damage to him on top of that. You know, no saving throw, no legendary resistances, no nothing. Yeah, it's just a lot better. And I feel like, you know, again, Charmed or Frightened, useful abilities, but, you know, maybe not as strong as I would like on my level 14 ability, which gives them a saving throw. And they could be immune at this point to Charmed or Frightened condition themselves. You start facing a lot of things by the time you're level 14 that are immune to those kind of conditions, right? Whereas, you know, not a lot get immune to being banished to hell. That's a very, very rare ability. Anyways, overall, though, like I said, I feel that the Archfey still holds up fairly well. I think it's a pretty decent subclass. I think it definitely lends itself better towards the casting type of, you know, Warlock that we could play. I'm not saying you can't play swords or, you know, blade types Archfeys. I've actually seen that done. I saw somebody who played a College of Swords Bard with an Archfey Warlock multiclass, and it was actually pretty decent. They were dual wielding, so, you know, Hexblade wasn't really what they were looking for, I guess. And I think they wanted kind of some of the thematic choices. I think that something like an Archfey Warlock compared or combined with an like Oath of the Ancients Paladin would make a very, very solid multi-class, right? Where you could get enough levels in Paladin to get your extra attack from there, maybe get your aura and everything else, and then grab a bunch of Warlock levels. And now you've got, you know, spells that you can be casting with your Warlock slots or with your Paladin slots. You can be smiting with those Warlock spell slots. I think it's definitely a cool and thematic and interesting idea. And just the subclass itself in general has a lot of flavor that I really, really like. Do I think it's the most powerful one in the game still after we've got multiple source books? You know, obviously not. Like I said, things like Hexblade and the Pact of the Djinn really kind of stand above the rest, in my opinion, at least at this point. But, you know, there's some other ones as well that are not too far behind those, I would say. You know, Fathomless and Fiend both being pretty strong choices as well, of course. But I still feel like the Archfey is a decent choice. I like the fact that your level 1 ability is actually pretty good. I like the fact that your level 6 ability gives you, you know, a nice use for your reaction with a teleport and invisibility all built into it. That's just a great ability, you know. Overall, I think it's still a pretty decent subclass. I feel the spell list, the low-end spells are great at low level. The high-end spells are pretty great, period, right? Some of the middle ones, still not bad though, you know. Like I said, you know, Plunk Ghost is pretty good, like Blink isn't bad, you know. So I still feel like the mid-range spells aren't too bad either. But it is one where if I take some of these spells, I'm going to be replacing them a lot. But, you know, that's okay. I mean, we get the options to do that, so, you know, why not take advantage of them, I guess. Overall, I still feel like it's a pretty strong subclass. You know, and like I said, it's really cool thematically. It's one that I like a lot. And I'm glad that it still at least is, you know, at least somewhat comparable to the other builds. It's not like it's, you know, become absolutely useless and it's, you know, just absolute bottom tier. I do not think that at all. But anyways, that's everything for this video. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell for notifications. I'd love to hear about other people's stories about playing an Archfey Warlock. I've never played one yet, although we have had some played at our table. I guess actually just one. It was just the multi-class guy, actually, now that I think about it. But he did take quite a bit of Warlock, so at least that was pretty good. It wasn't like a one-level dip or anything like that, right? But yeah, I know that to this day it's still a popular one. It's one that I see people make comments in the comment sections all the time when I talk about Warlock, and I'll be like, oh, I used, you know, Hexblade with this, or I used, you know, the Genie Pact or whatever, and then somebody will be like, oh, I did the same thing with an Archfey, and it's like, good. I'm glad people are still playing it. Because like I said, it's one that I've always actually liked. I think the flavor is cool. I like that kind of like Fey and Dark Fey type of stuff. It's stuff I use on a lot of the campaigns that I run as a Dungeon Master. I just think that they're kind of weird and intriguing, and they're not really like good, but they're not necessarily evil either. And you know, I just really like those kind of aspects of their, you know, of those Fey realms and of those Fey type creatures. And, you know, I think they make for cool characters as well. So anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.